curves, chalk and chucks.
Welcome back, fellas. We are back with another episode of Curves, Chalk, and Chucks. I'm Charlie Butler. I'm here with my co-host, Charlie Mathis. Let's jump into it.
All right, everybody. We're super excited to be here today. On our list, we've got a little spring training stuff and a little World Baseball Classic stuff. But before we get to that, we have basically 3 player updates. The first one is going to be a bit of a negative. Jurickson Profar is suspended for PEDs again. He gets busted this time instead of an 81 game suspension, I believe, which is, half a season. It's 162 games, the full season. And that's kind of a big bat in this Braves lineup that now goes away. What do you got on this, Chuck?
Yeah, it's just kind of disappointing. I feel like he was coming into his own. He was obviously a pretty highly touted prospect back when he was younger. Didn't really do much when he was with the Rangers, and finally got to San Diego and made a little bit of an impact. But he was an all-star 2 years ago, and he decides to do something like this, which really kind of hurts. It's like what are you doing? Like, what do you have to prove now? Obviously, he got busted last year. I think it's the last we see of him. I don't really see any. I think he let his teammates down, especially on the World Baseball Classic, where he just kind of left the team without saying sorry or apologizing or anything. I think it's honestly insulting to baseball almost. Like, what are you doing? Why are you that this was an issue in the past? You've already been busted once. Like, what's the point of doing it again? Making millions of dollars to go play baseball. So that's what I got on that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We talked a few episodes about Barry Bonds, right? And obviously he's had his, you can never be 100% sure of everything, but everyone agrees, he did PEDs. And I could see something being brought up about, what I will say is that was normal at the time and kind of everyone was doing it. And we can't pretend like it's the same age of baseball that it is now, right? Being suspended for a whole season, and it's warranted, 100% it's warranted, but it just sucks. Right? Because this is, to be honest, this is so many people's dreams. What percent of high school baseball players, and then what percent of college baseball players, and what percent of people who get drafted or sign a minor league deal, what percent of people in the minors even make it to the majors? It is a minuscule percentage. And so, you've been given a gift almost, right? You've been given a gift, you've been given this talent, and, you're looking at 2 guys right here who, if I could have played in the MLB, I would have, and I'm sure you'd say the same, Charlie, and so would about millions of people across the world. And to take your talent and your gifts and, get busted for PEDs, not once, one time, I can see anyone making a mistake, right? I can be forgiving, but 2 times in that short of a time span is really embarrassing. And I agree with your call, Chuck, that I think he's done. Because how are you going to hand out a contract to this guy? How are you going to give him millions of dollars, right? How are you going to trust him with a spot on your active roster and trust him to be your left fielder, right fielder, whatever, when he's going to do this, right? There's 30 teams in the MLB, and that means that there's 60 people who play corner outfield. I know that's kind of an odd way to think about it, but you're saying you're trusting him out of 60 people in the world to play corner outfield, and it's we could have signed someone else, and now they're gone. There's just so much that the Braves are going to miss out on because of this, and so, I don't know, I think it's to some extent insulting to the people that never got a chance and also to the organization that you side with.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, bringing up the fact that we talked about Bonds, because it really is a completely different game. Back then it was superhuman genetically engineered mutants hitting baseballs 100,000 miles off of other genetically engineered mutants. So it's it was all fair in my opinion. And this is just straight up cheating. It kind of reminds me of Tatis getting caught a couple years ago. That was it was kind of just out of nowhere. I feel like Jurickson Profar is kind of in the same thing where the first one was out of nowhere, and then this one, fool me once, fool me twice. Yeah. But you just kind of let everybody down, let his team down. I think Braves fans got to be the most disappointed. When they signed him, you're getting a guy who put up a 3.6 WAR, was a Silver Slugger, an All-Star, and then you get him, gets busted for PEDs, misses half the season, and then turns out he's missing a whole season now and probably won't play another inning of baseball.
Yeah, and it's just tough. I know we talked about Connor Griffin, what was it, last week, I think, and I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think was Jurickson Profar not a number 1 prospect at some point? I believe he was a number 1 prospect in baseball.
Yeah,
right?
I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah, and so they crack these guys up to be, everything. You know, I read a report on, I don't know, some Dominican kid who signed in the international complex with like the Yankees or something, and they were like, this guy's got the potential to be Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani combined. It's like, I feel like this is the result. This is what happens when you crack someone up to be everything. You promise the baseball world that this guy's going to give you the moon and the stars. And we know that baseball is such a delicate sport. There's so much that can throw it off. Jordan Walker was supposed to be the best thing in the world. Guess what? He can't hit a curveball, and he is a net negative to the Cardinals. And so when Jurickson Profar starts struggling, when he starts saying to himself, look, I'm not the player that's cracked up to be, you can't imagine what that does to a guy's mental health, right? And, you know, obviously this ain't a mental health podcast, but I think to some extent this may be a result of cracking guys up to be amazing. You know, you could see that with Conor Griffin. What if the guy gets to the majors and he doesn't do it, right?
Yeah.
I have to imagine that that's something that drove Jurickson Profar to do this. And I don't know the guy. I will never know the guy, but I like to get in guys' minds and kind of go through what they're thinking, because I don't think anyone really wants to break the rules. You want to be good, right? And everyone has that desire for success, and some people have it a little more when they were essentially promised that, or the baseball world has promised that of them.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that you brought up the whole like mental health aspect. I mean, these guys are under so much pressure. Ken Griffey Jr. is a great example of that. When he was in the minor league system, he like tried to commit suicide, from what I know. So it's like, you know, there's all this pressure. You're away from home. You don't have your family around. So I do think that maybe that was a factor that contributed to Jurickson Profar deciding to use PEDs. Of course, like you said, we're never going to know exactly why he did it, but I would imagine that that had something to do with it. But you look at this 2013 prospects rankings, and it's like none of these guys have really panned out. And I think Jurickson Profar being that number one, and you have guys like Dylan Bundy, late Oscar Taveras, rest in peace. Will Myers, Taijuan Walker, Travis d'Arnaud, Jose Fernandez, again, rest in peace. Zach Wheeler, Garrett Cole, Tyler Skaggs for the top 10. And it's just like, out of all of those guys, not very many of them panned out. D'Arnaud's had a great career. Zach Wheeler and Garrett Cole obviously have had great careers, but Dylan Bundy, he hasn't done much. Taijuan Walker's not done much. So it's just that there has to be so much pressure, and you're under a microscope. Everybody's watching you. You have these huge multi-billion-dollar franchises, and it's you have all that pressure to go out there and play good. And if you're not doing it, that's got to be a struggle.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, you know, something that wasn't even present in 2013 is you've got social media now. And I know that maybe Jurickson Profar didn't suffer from that to the extent that he would today if he was a prospect, but it's the same thing with umpires. With if anyone makes a mistake, it's broadcast for the entire freaking world to see. It wasn't just the people at the park and the people that watched SportsCenter that day. It's these videos that get millions of views on Instagram, on TikTok, on, you know, whatever social media app you want to use, YouTube, right? And so that's another difference. Is TV was one thing and SportsCenter was one thing. We all remember the SportsCenter top 10, right? Top 10 fails. And that a lot of people watch that, but it is just heightened, right, in the age of social media. And so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think it's unfortunate, and I do feel bad for Jurickson Profar, because I understand people make mistakes, but at this point, I think you're right. I think he's done. Just an unfortunate situation all the way around, man.
For sure. Yeah, let's move on to the little bit of World Baseball Classic beef. We have Randy Arozarena and Cal Raleigh got into it a little bit. Arozarena calling him out on Instagram or some social media. But what do you have on that, Chuck?
Yeah, you know, I haven't looked at it a ton. I saw the video of Cal Raleigh refusing to shake his hand. I didn't actually hear about the Instagram call out, or, you know, wherever it was. Yeah, if you could pull that up, that'd be great, because I saw that I guess they had fixed the beef, supposedly, on Instagram, but I guess I saw the beginning and the end of the story. What do you have here from our former Cardinal, Randy Arozarena?
Cardinals legend Randy Arozarena was speaking to a Mexican journalist, Luis Gilbert, in Spanish. This is off of ESPN. He said Raleigh could fuck off and go to hell. Arozarena added that Raleigh told him, "Good to see you," and that Raleigh can shove it straight up his ass. Okay. He was talking about his parents. Said his parents are really, like Randy was saying, that Cal Raleigh's parents are really cool, and he gave him a hug, but that their son sucks. Basically, he was kind of insinuating that, and that Raleigh just not shaking his hand was a sign of disrespect. So just a kind of a strange situation when they're going to be playing baseball together in about a month. So I mean, I don't really see like where it even could go. Like I don't see any of these players getting traded. I think Raleigh was kind of being a little bit of a dick by not shaking his hand. It's like, come on, like that's your teammate. You just almost made it to the World Series with this guy, and you're gonna like I don't know, try to stage him up a little bit, national TV. So I could see both sides of this. You know, you want to be competitive. Australia's catcher did the same thing. Didn't shake one of the another player's hand. So yeah, I get the whole competitive thing, but I mean, again, it's your boy.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense to me. So are you telling me, I always just want to make sure I have the story right here.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that the first aggravation of this was Raleigh not shaking his hand, and then Arozarena went to the press and started saying bad things about Raleigh's parents?
Yeah, that is exactly what happened. This article by Jeff Passan was a little, it's a little hard to read, but he doesn't say exactly what he said. I saw it online earlier. Here you go. Here's the full quote. The other thing I want to say to him, I'll tell it to him in Cuban style. What he needs to do is go fuck himself. Mexican style, he can go fuck himself. And in English, I'm going to say it to him in English. That good to see you he gave me, he can shove it up his ass.
Okay. Now, Randy, I have two reactions. First off, don't say that. Second, that is really badass.
Cool,
That is
yeah.
awesome. I
Uh-huh.
mean, if I was, there's something to be said for if you're going to cuss a guy out, do it in outstanding fashion. That's awesome. But in a more real sense, it's like, dude, what are you doing? He always kind of, I'm going to tell you something that I've always kind of thought. You remember when he just went crazy for the Rays in the playoffs? Like, he had the best playoff ever. I could have sworn he was on roids. And obviously he's not, but this kind of makes me think that he is. Like, what kind of roid rage is that? Like, I don't know why you're getting that pressed over a guy not shaking your hand. I mean, yeah. I understand that maybe you won't always have the best relationship with the people you work with. I mean, I understand that. Everyone understands that. But do you not leave any room for a little bit of miscommunication? I mean, does that never cross your mind that maybe he was being competitive, or maybe, talk to the guy first before you cuss him out? I don't know. Like, this seems so immature to me personally. I mean, what are we doing here? You guys are being paid millions to play baseball. You got to go yap to the press.
I mean, again, I love it. I love whenever guys get fired up. I was talking about Machado last week,
Yeah.
Let Randy get fired up. I just don't like that it's at his teammate. Like, it's your boy. Like, come on, like, you're supposed to love this guy. You guys are playing baseball together. Like, how could you hate it? Again, I kind of see Randy's point of view. It's like, just shake the guy's hand. Like, is it really, put all like the competitiveness aside? Like, it is the World Baseball Classic, but like, this guy, like, he just said that he like hugged your parents. Obviously you guys were cool, at least like maybe not anymore. But Raleigh, he apparently got on a FaceTime with the journalist Ryan Divish and said, "There's no beef with Randy. I love him. He's my brother." And apparently he's already talked to Randy, to manager Dan Wilson, to talk about what transpired. So I think they might have nipped it in the bud, but who knows? Who knows if this will have lingering effects for the Mariners? I kind of hope it does. As like a little bit of a Mariners fan, I kind of want to see them get fired up. It might make them play better, might make them play worse, but baseball wins either way.
Yeah, I will say I don't really know much about Dan Wilson, but my immediate thought is that's a pretty good call on his part for being the person to cultivate that apology and that misunderstanding, right? If there's no other job for a head coach in this scenario, it's that. I mean, good on him, good on getting his players straight up, because the Mariners have got a freaking squad, man. And if there's one thing that was gonna screw up their season, it would be a clubhouse issue like this. And so good on him for nipping it in the bud early. We're gonna move on now to our last kind of player story. Phillies left-handed pitcher Jesus Luzardo signs a 5-year extension for $135 million, which adds up to $27 million a year. So he's under team control through 2031. What do you got for this, Chuck?
I think it's a great signing personally. He kind of had a resurgence. He was obviously a pretty highly touted prospect when he was younger. He was with Oakland, Miami. Never really panned out as much as he would have liked to early. Last year he finished 7th in Cy Young voting, had a 3.9 WAR. Yeah, he was great last year. He was definitely serviceable. I think the Phillies like really got a steal. I'd have to see their depth chart to see what their pitching is looking like. Just off the top of my head, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez. Like, you have some dogs on this roster. Andrew Painter. I know that they have some prospects too. So I think it bolsters their rotation. I think it really helps their team. I kind of like this Phillies team, honestly. Like the way it's looking, I think they could have a decent run. Schwarber, if he keeps playing like he does, dude finished second MVP voting, put up 50 bombs. Yeah, I really like this Philly squad, and I think with Luzardo, I think they could go a lot further this year.
Yeah, I think locking up Luzardo long term is a really good play, especially since he's only, 27? So he is going to be there, I guess, 5 more years. He'll play there until he's 33, which is kind of that point where you might see a guy start to drop off. So I really like the time for this extension, that it's 5 years. It seems like a pretty perfect one. And 27 mil a year, that's just what it takes to get a starter in today's game of baseball. And I think that's kind of going to set the market for next year's free agent class as well. If this is what, because he would be a free agent after this year, if this is what a guy like him is getting, 27 mil a year. Let's see, last year he put up a 3.92 ERA over 32 starts. That's a 3.9 WAR. That's what it costs. Like, that's kind of top dollar for a guy who is probably on the cusp of being a number 1 guy. I would put him probably at the number 2 range, but there are a lot of teams that would be happy with him as their number 1. But all that aside, I really think that this says more about the starting pitcher market in today's game of baseball than it does about the Phillies or even about Jesus Luzardo himself. If this guy's getting $27 million a year, I mean, can you imagine what Tariq Skubal's going to get when he becomes a free agent next year, unless by some miracle he re-signs with the Tigers, but I think we all know that's not going to happen. So I really like what it says for the market. Good for these guys getting their coin, and good for Jesus Luzardo, a guy who's moved around a little bit in the minors.
Yeah, I think this really does set the tone for next year's free agent class, which looking at the starting pitchers that are in this is going to be a buyer's market. There's going to be a lot of guys going to different places. Some of the names on here, obviously Skubal, you got Kevin Gossman, Freddie Peralta, Sandy Alcantara, Shane Bieber, Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Jack Flaherty, Sonny Gray, who's a club option, Zach Gallen, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander probably going to retire, Matthew Boyd. But this is a pretty stacked free agency market next year. And if Jesus Luzardo is getting 27 a year, imagine what Zach Gallen might get if he does good this year, or Sandy Alcantara, who's former Cy Young Award winner. So, anything can happen. I think these guys are going to get paid. I think that free agency is going to be pretty chaotic next year. I'm here for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I think that's all we've got for that. We're going to move now to a little bit of an interesting segment. I did a little bit of a dive on this. I was in class earlier. I was kind of curious. Does spring training success accurately translate to regular season success? So don't hate me too much here, but I fired up the AI machine to pull up a bit of stats from the past few years, and I have about 3 answers for you. Short answer is no. Right, there's no correlation. We saw, in 2021, the Astros made the World Series, and they were one of the worst teams that year. The Cardinals, 2 years ago, are one of the best teams in the spring training. So generally speaking, no, there's no correlation between a team's success in spring and their success in the regular season. But there's a little correlation between individual player success in spring and summer. But it's small enough that it isn't really considered statistically significant. They would have to be basically above and beyond. They would have to kill it for that to translate well into the majors. But, and I know I'm kind of ranting here, there are some stats that do matter. Since a lot of people are facing, minor league talent, where you've got, a major league hitter like Aaron Judge going up against some AA Nationals guy, right? But there are some stats that do matter, right? How do I want to put this? These are the non-all-encompassing stats, like batting average. There's so much that goes into batting average, right? When you think about it, it's how often you get a hit, right? Out of all your at-bats. But so much goes into that, right? It depends on which pitcher you're facing. It depends on who the batter is. It depends on, to some extent, what the situation is, how many runners are on base. There's a good deal of luck that goes in. But here are the stats that do matter. Things like exit velocity, chase rate as a batter, as a pitcher, velocity, command. Those are the things that are super simple. It's a split-second decision, and that tells you in spring training whether a hitter or a pitcher has made a certain step.
Yeah, I do think that spring training does somewhat correlate to regular season success. One of the things that I was thinking about that really like shows me this is all of the Scott Boras guys that hold out and miss spring training, they end up doing a lot worse from what I've seen. An example is Craig Kimbrell. He was a Boras guy. He held out for way too long, finally got signed, and as soon as he got into some games, he ended up sucking. I think that it does correlate somewhat. But again, baseball is such a weird sport. It's like going back to Randy Rosarena thing. Who would have thought that this guy would have just popped off randomly in the middle of the postseason? You know, you can't really predict anything. You know, stats obviously show one side of the story, but again, there is a big like you got to witness some stuff, and spring training doesn't really encapsulate all of the aspects of baseball necessarily. I think that a guy, it's too short of a time span to really get enough like information out of. Like they're playing a lot of games. There's a lot of guys moving around, might be trying some stuff out. So you don't really get that team chemistry. You don't really get exactly where a guy's going to be in July from couple games in February, March.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, how many spring training games do you play? At most, like 40, right? I mean, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's a fraction of what you play in the regular season. And yeah, you touched on the other thing is that this isn't the squad that you're going to roll out there. I mean, a spring training roster, I think, is 60 guys that you can invite to a spring training roster, and you can only have 26 on the actual roster, right? And 40 on the 40-man roster. So it's too small of a sample size to make a decision on who's going to play well. And it's also that they're not facing major league talent often. But I do think, and maybe this is something that we can go into in a next episode, and once we have a little bit more spring training stats, maybe at the end of spring training, is which hitters or which pitchers have we seen change, right? Who do we see throwing at a higher velocity? Because how fast you throw it doesn't really have anything to do with who you're facing. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything else. How much movement do you have on your curveball and your slider? Do you have a new pitch? How is it coming out of the hand? That's all stuff that is simple and it doesn't rely on other things. And for hitters, to some extent, chase rate, swing decisions, right? And so we can look into that. We can go into stats at the very end of spring training once we have a bit of a bigger sample size. And actually, a lot of analysts will use those numbers to predict which rookies, which young guys, which older guys are going to have a resurgence. So I think that could be really interesting. I think that'd kind of be something that you don't really get out of a lot of baseball media.
Sure, I think that would be really interesting. Looking it up right now, the guys who are having slow starts in this spring training, you got Jordan Walker, Cardinals, struggling with a 60% ground ball rate and a 5 for 23 start. So awful. But again, who's to say he doesn't go out there and start mashing baseballs? Edwin Diaz, early struggles with command and harder contact compared to previous years. But I mean, he's obviously an elite closer. He was great last year. I don't think that you can really like value a guy based on this sample size. And I think that applies to teams too. Again, talking about the Cardinals, but they won the Grapefruit League a couple of years ago. Like just won the most games or whatever. That season they were like one of the worst teams in baseball. So you can't really you can't put a value on any of these things that are happening, especially players, especially the teams. So I think spring training is great. It's great to watch. It's great to see all these guys out there, but I don't really take into consideration I'm talking about how good a guy is or if he's gonna have a good season. Unless they're like really lighting it up. If they go like 10 for 10 with 10 bombs, then yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I'd be like, oh my God, this guy's going to have a great year. But I think it might be a little like overvalued. I think people might look at it a little too much and really like analyze everything when they need to realize like this isn't regular season. These guys might not care as much. Like why would Mike Trout care about spring training compared to like a 20-year-old rookie who's trying to make the team? Mike Trout obviously wants to get his reps in, but that other guy is going to be fighting for his life out there. So some guys might be trying a little bit harder. Again, I don't know. I'm not on a spring training roster currently. If any teams want to sign me, just let me know. But yeah, I mean, it really depends. It's kind of hard to like really put that amount of value on a player's performance.
Yeah, I really like that call about, some guys, this is their 15th spring training, and some guys are trying to make a roster. I really like that call. Moving now to the next thing on my list, World Baseball Classic is underway, has been underway. It wasn't underway in our last episode. The pool play is almost done. We've got it up on our sheet right now. There has been one team to clinch in every pool except for Pool B, which is the one the U.S. is in. So we have Puerto Rico clinching in Pool A. There are 2 people who make it from each pool, so 8 teams that head to the quarterfinals. Puerto Rico is 3-0. They've clinched. Cuba and Canada are going to battle it out for the second spot out of Pool A, and they actually play each other, I believe, tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday, so they'll play each other tomorrow. And actually, Canada and Puerto Rico are playing as we record this. That game actually has no bearing on whether Canada makes it or not, because even if they lose that game, they'll be 1-2. If they play Cuba, then they both finish 2-2, right? And Canada would have the tiebreaker over them. So Cuba-Canada is a playing game out of Pool A. Pool B, the U.S. hasn't quite clinched yet, but they would have to have a lot go wrong for them to lose. They play Italy late tonight. As we're recording this, USA beat Mexico, and I believe it's Italy or Mexico to join the U.S. out of Pool B. In Pool C and Pool D, it's already decided Japan and Korea are going out of Pool C, and out of Pool D, Venezuela and the Dominican Republic both sit at 3-0. They will both make it to the quarterfinals. You have anything else there, Chuck?
I kind of want to see Italy make it out of Pool B. That'd be kind of cool. I don't think their team is really like that bad. Compared to some of these other ones, it's not a bad roster. So I think that would be kind of cool. I think Mexico will end up making it out, but obviously US 3-0. I think compared to the power rankings, I think they did a pretty good job. Japan's the only 4-0 team as of now. Obviously, Dominican Republic is pretty damn good. Who are they in? Where are they at? Yeah, they went 3-0. So, I think they honestly did a pretty good job. Now, looking back at it, I had some things to say with USA not being one over Japan, but Japan's playing great right now. I can't really be upset about that. Yeah, I just want to see some crazy stuff happen. I want to see some weird teams make it out. I'm a little disappointed with Czechia going 0-4 and Nicaragua as well. I want to see them win. Israel being 1-2, hell yeah, good for them. Netherlands 1-2. Some weird teams winning that are not making it out that we're not going to see anymore. So the World Baseball Classic is dominated by like the USAs and the Japans and Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. So it's kind of hard for those smaller countries to make it out. And I don't think we're ever going to see a world where like Czechia ever makes it deep. That just isn't realistic. It's USA and Japan's game to play, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's very much a top-heavy tournament, right? I thought it was kind of cool. There was a 17-year-old out of Brazil that ended up pitching for them. I don't know if you saw that. I was listening to the broadcast. I guess everyone saw the replay of him getting Aaron Judge to ground out. That's pretty cool. How cool is that, right? You're like a senior in high school, and you're emailing your teacher like, hey, can I have an extension on this homework? I'm actually playing for Brazil. I have to go face Aaron Judge, the reigning MVP. Can I turn in my paper a few days late? That's crazy. That's crazy to me. But good for that kid. The guy throws 94. Dude, that's pretty awesome. Touching a little bit back on the Jurickson Profar thing, a little sad, right? The World Baseball Classic / MLB power rankings had the Netherlands at 10. I called him out when we did our picks as a team that could surprise people. Not without Jurickson Profar, right? He's had some down years, but he's still a major leaguer. And that's one less major leaguer on their roster. They needed all of them they could really get. So he, like you said, he kind of disappoints his team there. I think I will say, like, the teams like Czechoslovakia, Brazil, Panama, Israel, right, Netherlands, these are teams that don't really have a ton of representation of baseball in their country. And I think that's, what the World Baseball Classic is supposed to do. I don't follow every sport the U.S. plays in. I know we have a cricket team. I never watched them. But I think it does, to some extent, people see that, they'll watch it, and, maybe some 5-year-old kid will fall in love with baseball, and then he'll start playing in his backyard. You never know. And so I think it's good for the sport, right? Even when you have these teams that don't know what they're doing. But yeah, still a little bit to be figured out of the pools, but we definitely do have a gist of who the great teams are, who the bad teams are, and who's kind of in the middle.
I kind of want to go back to Italy because I think that this does kind of factor into that representation thing. There are only 2 players on Team Italy that were actually born in Italy. Everybody else is from either U.S. or Venezuela, of all places. There's one Canadian, too. I think that something needs to change, honestly. I think that, like, if I have, like, an Italian grandparent, I can't go play for Italy. I think that there does need to be a little bit stricter on that, honestly, because if you want representation, you want people to tune in these games, I think you need players that are from that country. But again, that does make the games less interesting because you're going to be watching like Team Czechia, who like has plumbers and electricians playing for them. Might make the games a little less interesting. I don't know. I would want to watch guys from my own country. Again, there's not a whole lot of Italian representation. This team's actually pretty stacked when you look at it. It's not bad. But yeah, I hope that the World Baseball Classic does get the message of baseball out because clearly we love it. We're talk about it every week for about an hour and a half and post it on the internet. So I'd hope we like it. But I hope that this kind of expands people's horizons. They can see a little bit more of it, especially like the Netherlands. I don't know if they're really tuning in. I don't know if they really care, but hope they are. I don't know if Israel really gives a shit about baseball, especially with everything going on. But be cool if they did.
Here's what I'll say. I want your thoughts on this, Chuck. How about, you got to sound like you're from that place. And obviously I can only say this about Italy, but you got some guys out here. You got Sam Aldegheri, right? De Lucia, Festa, Lorenzen. And then you got a Teal, right? And you got who else? Ron Wotus is a bench coach. I mean, all respect to those guys. Kyle Teal, Ron Wotus. But I want my Italians to be Jack Caglione, right? I want to hear the music in it. So, yeah, maybe, you don't have that issue with Japan. You could tell all those guys are Japanese. Netherlands is a little different. Jemdrik Cornelia. And then you got Kevin Kelly. It's like, maybe if you've got a last name that sounds like you're from the place. Thoughts on that? What do you think of that, Chuck?
I agree. I agree 100%. I'm trying to find an example. Where did Italy go? What was I just looking at? I want my Italians to be Vinny Pasquantino. That's literally like, that could be the most Italian name I've ever heard. But then you look at Alec Jacob, and it's like, that's not Italian. Andrew Fisher.
You're not Italian.
Yeah, but then you have, what are we looking at here? Renzo Martini. Like, that sounds pretty Italian to me. Yeah, I agree. I think that these guys need to sound a little bit more like their home countries. I don't know if that's like nationalism, but why is Riley O'Brien on Team Korea? Like,
yeah,
he's on the list next to, I'm gonna butcher this name, Kyung Yoon No and Young Hyun Park. So
you can at least tell that Riley O'Brien's Korean, though.
Yeah, I mean,
you can tell, even though his last name's O'Brien, which is like the most Irish name ever. And that's the question, what do you do with America? Who do we sound like? You just have to, I guess you have to have a British name, but then what of Great Britain? This is a huge issue. World Baseball Classic needs to solve it right now.
Yeah, we need to figure this out. If anybody tuning in knows like the head of the World Baseball Classic, just let us know. We can get on the phone with them and make this happen.
And then to be actually more realistic to what you said, if you had a grandparent who went there, I don't know, different people connect with their country in different ways, right? With the U.S., like, it's just a ton of, you can't really argue these guys are American, but that's the thing. It's like probably something like 90% of the people or more who are playing baseball live in America. And you got some guys in the Dominican Republic and the Bahamas, around the Caribbean. But generally speaking, how are you going to field a team from places like Italy if you don't allow these guys with parentage to play there? You get what I'm saying? But I do think it'd be really interesting to see people who actually are like grew up in their home country.
Yeah.
What's his name? Jazz Chisholm, right? He's not British. I'm sure he's I think is it maybe because the Bahamas, he was related to the British in some facet, but has that guy ever been to Great Britain? Maybe he's traveled to London. I'm not hating on it because obviously you need to fill out some rosters, but I would be interested to see, like, you had to have been born there or have lived there for a little bit, or I don't know, or I don't know what the rules are right now. I probably should have looked them up, but I would be interested to see how much they could change.
I think a quick fix to this would just be like have a certain amount of your team be actually born in that country. Like have half of that team born in USA. I think Mexico is the best balance of this. They have a really good balance, honestly. Most of their guys are from Mexico. You got a lot of guys from the US. And then you have Randy Rosarena, going back to that. He's from Cuba. I don't think that he even has parentage, to be honest with you. I think that he just like really likes Mexico and Mexico really likes him and they let him play and he wants to play. But good on him. He got out of Cuba through them. Shout out to that. But it's like, He's not really Mexican. Like, how can I mean? From what I know, I don't really know for sure if Randy Rosarena is Mexican or not. But that don't count. You're not Mexican.
All right, we're going to move now to what do we think of the MLB World Baseball Classic Power Rankings after the first round. We already did go over this, but now that some games have been played, we've got Japan at the 1, USA at 2, Dominican Republic at 3, Venezuela at 4, then Mexico, Puerto Rico, Korea in the 7, Canada at 8, Colombia at 9, and the Netherlands at 10. What's your first reaction to this, Charlie?
I think I overhyped Netherlands a little too much. I was really pro Netherlands, and then they do that. Yeah, Canada. I don't know. Well, no, Canada's 1-1. We're not really like technically out of the round yet, so it's a little hard to say. But Netherlands is 1-2, and I was talking all that, so I take it back. I'm sorry. I wanted to be proud of them, and they played good. Shout out Andrew Jones and Drew Jones and all that, but their time has come. They're not making it out. Their power ranking will not improve. I think Japan being 1, I honestly think that also checks out. They're 4-0. They've played great. You can't really be mad about that. But I do think that they need to factor in the strength of the schedule in these power rankings, because you have some pools that have Puerto Rico, Cuba, Canada, Colombia, Panama. And that's not really the strongest pool ever. I think we all agree that Puerto Rico and Cuba are going to be the ones that come out of that. And then you have some a little bit stronger ones. I think Pool C is actually a little bit competitive with Japan and Korea. Australia is really not that bad. D too. D's pretty competitive. Venezuela and Dominican Republic are both 3-0. So it's kind of hard to really rank these without talking about that. Japan, I think, deserves it at number 1 right now, because I think their schedule has been harder than what USA has played. So them at 1 makes sense to me. Dominican Republic at 3 checks out. I think that's good. I still think USA is better than them. Both of them are 3-0. So I'm not really too upset. Yeah, I think they did a good job, honestly. I think that it is a pretty good power ranking.
Yeah, it holds up, at least through what we've seen. And obviously, they did make the pools so that if they made a pool with USA, Japan, and the DR, and it'd be like, all right, come on, what are you doing? Obviously, one of those teams, which are all clearly the top 3 in the tournament, aren't going to make it. But they did make it pretty clearly so that, USA and Japan can play in the finals or whatever. We knew that we wouldn't see some amazing games out of the first few games of pool play, but the games haven't been horrible. I think Puerto Rico has kind of surprised me. They've played extremely well, even with, a lot of people who are held out for insurance reasons. I'm not counting out Canada. I don't mind Canada. They were placed ahead of Colombia for a reason, and they did beat Colombia as well. And then Korea is pretty salty. I know they had a few kind of tough losses, but they have my respect. I would love to see Canada and Korea play each other. I don't think that's how the bracket shakes out, but I would love to see that. But I do think that, you look at this 1 through 3, right? Japan, USA, DR. I think they're 1 tier. And then I think Venezuela is kind of in a tier of its own. They're not quite the top 3, and they're not quite the next below. But then I think Mexico, Puerto Rico, Korea, and Canada are all kind of one and the same, to me at least. And Puerto Rico and Canada are playing as we speak. And actually, yeah, it's tied. About 5 minutes ago, Puerto Rico was up 1-0, but now they're tied at 1. So, anything could happen in that game. Obviously, we'll keep going after we film. But I really kind of like that as a tier. And yeah, I don't like the Netherlands being at 10. But that being said, they made these before we knew the Jurickson Profar stuff. And I think without him, they're definitely a lower tier.
Yeah, I think you need to put Puerto Rico in the same category as Venezuela, honestly. I think you're kind of discrediting what they've done. Their roster is really good. You're looking at it, and there's some big names. I keep going back to this, but the pitching, I think that is where they're hurt. I think that's where they're not going to make it as far as some other teams might. But their lineup is pretty stacked. You got Nolan Arenado, and you got Willie Castro, MJ Melendez. Yeah, their roster is pretty good. Who else would I say deserves to be in that category? I don't know. I just don't see Canada really being that good. I don't really like our neighbors to the north as much as I like Puerto Rico. I don't think I like them as much as I like Venezuela, obviously, or any of the lower tier teams, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll see how it shakes up. By the end of this week, all of pool play will be done. And then on Monday, I think we will have a few games of the quarterfinals done by Monday. But we'll see what happens. I think we're about ready to wrap it up here. I think that's a pretty good podcast. I think we packed a good deal of action into it. We're super happy with World Baseball Classics going on. Great for the sport of baseball. Obviously excited to see what happens in the future, but we're also super excited to get the season started. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. A huge thanks to Eric and Brooke, as always, for their work and the whole Sandman team. Go check us out on YouTube and go check out the other Sandman podcasts.
Yep. Thank you guys.
See ya.